Not your average tabletop. Woohoo!
Welcome to Not So Average Tabletop. I'm Zach, and for today's rules recipe, we're looking at the Quacks of Quedlinburg. The ingredients that make up the Quacks of Quedlinburg are a scoreboard, some player bags, some player boards, fortune teller cards, flasks, a die, and various chips of different colors. However, in your version, they will be cardboard. These are upgraded bits. Set up the Quacks of Quedlinburg, put the scoring track in the middle of the table, then put the flame on the one space of the round indicator. Then put the seals on the board as well, on the zero with the zero side facing up. Then shuffle the fortune teller cards. Then also set out the die, the rubies, and all the different colored chips within reach of everyone at the table. Next, set up the various books for each chip color, with black being based on the player count and all the rest of them being chosen at random to score the chips in different ways from game to game. Lastly, each player receives one pot player board, one bag, which they put their starting chips in, which is 1 3 white chip, 2 2 white chips, 4 1 white chips, a 1 green chip, and also a 1 pumpkin. They then put their scoring tile on the scoring board, take their water droplet and start it on the 0 spot, also put their rat tile in their bowl, and put a full flask down on their player board as well. The last player to cook something will be the starting player. Each round, the first player will draw a fortune teller card, read what it says, and apply its effects to that round. In every round following the initial round, the second thing that will be done is determine the rat tokens for each player. To do this, you'll have to look at how many rats are between the first place player and your position on the board. In this case, the green player has one rat tail in between them and the yellow player. Therefore, the yellow player will put their rat tail token one spot in front of their water droplet. After all boards have been set up, everyone will move on to the potions phase. In this phase, players will draw chips out of their bag and place them on their board. Chips are added to the board based on their values. If the chip has a 1 on it, it will be placed one spot in front of the previous chip. If it has a 2 or 4 on it, it will move 2 or 4 spots in front of the previous chips. After each chip is drawn and placed, players must decide whether they want to stop or draw another chip from their bag. The reason a player might want to stop is because their pot will explode if the sum of all white chips drawn exceeds the value of 7. A player whose pot explodes must stop and is not allowed to draw any more chips. However, the last chip drawn is still placed in the pot. One thing to note when you're placing chips is that some of them have special abilities based on the books you chose for the specific game. So remember to follow these rules as you place them. If the last chip you drew was white, you may put it back in your bag by using your flask. One thing to note though is that if the last white chip you drew caused your pot to explode, the flask cannot be used. Once everyone has decided to stop drawing chips or has been forced to stop because of an explosion, the evaluation phase begins. The individual steps of the evaluation phase are in the middle of the scoring banner. Players whose pots have exploded do not take part in evaluation phase A, which is the dice roll. The first step of the evaluation phase is the bonus die. For this phase, everyone whose potion did not explode checks to see who reached the highest scoring space. Some spaces have the same scoring value, in which case the furthest one from the space 0 is the highest scoring space. This player gets to roll the bonus die for a bonus. If there is a tie, they all get to roll the die. The second step of the evaluation phase is the chip actions. Beginning with the starting player and then proceeding clockwise, each player will see if they have any black, green, or purple chips in their pots and then carry out any actions or benefits of these chips. Players should check the ingredient book cards if they have any questions regarding the effects of the chips. The third step of the evaluation phase is rubies. All players whose scoring space has a ruby depicted on it receive 1 ruby. It does not matter if the player's pot exploded or not. This would be an example of a player who would receive a ruby since they stopped one before the ruby spot on their board. This would also be an example of a person who would receive a ruby even though their pot exploded. The 4th and 5th steps of the evaluation phase kind of work together based on whether or not your pot exploded. If your pot did not explode, you will receive both victory points and have the ability to buy chips. Otherwise, you must choose one of the two. Beginning with the start player, everyone receives the victory points depicted on their respective scoring space. For example, this player would score 2 points, so they would move their scoring marker along the scoring track accordingly. Then, for the buy chips portion of the phase, beginning with the start player, everyone takes turn buying chips. You may buy 1 or 2 chips. If buying 2 chips, they cannot be the same color. The number of the scoring space is the number of coins the player gets that round for buying additional ingredients. The cost of a chip is listed in the ingredient books themselves. The number to the far left is the cost for a 1 chip, the number in the middle is for a 2 chip, and the number to the far right is a 4 chip. Once everyone has finished shopping, each player puts the purchased chips into their bag along with all the drawn chips from that round. The final part of the evaluation phase is the end of turn. For this, you can choose to spend 2 rubies if you have them, to either move your water droplet up 1 space, or to refill up your flask if you have used it. Then you'll move the round indicator to the next open spot. Some things to note for specific rounds are, at the beginning of round 2, you will now be able to purchase yellow chips. At the beginning of round 3, you'll be able to purchase purple chips. And at the beginning of round 6, you'll have to add 1 more 1 white chip to your bag. Lastly, during the potion phase of the final round, the start player gives the command stir, and everyone reaches into their bag simultaneously to take out the chips. If a player wishes to stop putting ingredients into their pot, they pull their hand out of their bag with no chip. This simultaneous action continues for all active players until everyone has either stopped pulling out chips or their pots have blown up. Players can also decide at any time to draw simultaneously in turns 1 through 8. This prevents anyone from gaining an advantage by seeing what others have done before they decide whether they want to pull a chip out of their bag. One final way to score additional points on the last round is to trade in every 5 coins for a victory point and every 2 rubies for a victory point as well. You can repeat this as many times as you wish. As players pass 50 points, they can flip over their seal to show that they have 50 points plus whatever they are. The player whose scoring marker is the furthest down the scoring track wins. If more than one player shares first place, the one who is able to fill up their pot the most in the last turn wins. If it is still a tie, they can all claim to be the biggest quack of Quedlinburg. I hope this gives you a good idea of how to play the Quacks of Quedlinburg. If you have any other questions about how to play the game, please leave a comment below. Otherwise, if you want to see some more content on this, check out the links below to some other videos for the Quacks of Quedlinburg. If you like this video, give it a like, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, thanks for watching and keep on nibbling.